All right, so I think we can go ahead and get started. We'll have a few more join us as we roll here, but good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for our final webinar this fall semester. We are so excited to have entrepreneur, certified business coach, and motivational speaker Laura Jimner joining us this evening. Tonight's webinar will be recorded and sent out for you to rewatch or if you wanted to share it with somebody who may find it valuable. And lastly, please jot down any questions you might have, as Laura has left some time at the end to answer any of your questions, or you can go ahead and put any of your questions in the chat. So with that, I would like to give Laura a warm welcome, and I'll let you take it from here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Kelsey. And I really am excited to be here today and welcome everyone to our talk tonight, Boss Up the Clarity and Confidence to Start or to Start Over. And as we are getting started with the focus really being on starting and growing our businesses, I invite you to put in the chat box what your business is, or if maybe you're someone with a dream in your heart, but let's just share that out so that we can start to collaborate as a community and to really kind of be able to celebrate each other and support each other in our ventures. And as you are doing that, and feel free, as Kelsey mentioned, as things are coming up, if there's any questions, we can field those during the presentation, or there'll definitely be time at the end as well. So, and also too, I just wanted to make a special mention that this is Global Entrepreneur Week. So in particular, to have a topic like this tonight where we can spend some time really talking about what that journey looks like, answer any questions that you may have, and to really be able to come together and support each other as a community. So the one question that changed my life: would you like to update your location to Greater Detroit area? I got this message from LinkedIn approximately 3 weeks after I had given notice at my corporate job. I had been coaching for about 4 years at this point on the side as what I kind of would call my side gig, a hobby business. And really, the irony of it all is I never really intended to be an entrepreneur. I spent several years trying to do what I thought was making me, to be successful. My college internship turned into a job, and I worked really hard, and I got promotions, and I got raises, and every time I would get that little bump of feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm doing a good job, I'm really successful, and it started to becoming less and less. And I really had to reflect to be like, why is that I am doing the things you're supposed to be successful, but not necessarily feeling like I was being successful. And in really starting to do some reflecting, I realized that I wasn't necessarily in the right spot. However, I was really scared to try something different. Like, it's all I'd ever known. And I really didn't necessarily set out to be an entrepreneur. But in starting to think about, like, what would I do next, I started looking around and, signed up for some of the job boards to send me different emails and openings, and nothing ever sounded like the right fit. Nothing ever sounded like super exciting, where at the same time I was also volunteering quite a bit in the community and was really engaged and really loving what I did. So that was kind of what I was holding up. Like, if I could enjoy all my volunteer things so much in the different organizations I was working with, like, couldn't I find work I love? So it was actually really kind of soul crushing to feel like you're not in the right job, you can't figure out what that right job was. And in the meantime, which happens so often, it was like that bigger scheme of things. Like, I wasn't happy in my life. Like, I really truly felt like I was living someone else's life. And because a lot of it, I was just kind of floating. I went to school for college in my backyard. My college internship turned into a job. I hadn't really made any significant decisions in my adult life. I just let life happen to me. And then, shocker, it wasn't necessarily aligned with my values, with my strengths, with the things that really kind of lit me up. And unfortunately, with not being aligned with those things, I found out the hard way what it's like to be in the wrong job and what that really can do to you. I wasn't being challenged. Um, Obviously, I didn't want to move to Michigan. Nothing against anyone out there that, maybe is from Michigan or has family and friends from Michigan, but it was like I had stars in my eyes. If I was going to move, it was going to be somewhere cool like LA or San Diego or New York or Denver, but it wasn't going to be to Michigan. So once I realized that I wasn't in the right spot and I wasn't doing anything, that took like 3 years that I was just kind of trying to figure it out. Like I was how I'd live the rest of my life waiting for something to happen, waiting for that next opportunity. And in the meantime, as with often with life changes, you get to that point where it's like, are you running towards something or are you running away from something? Like the pain point was just so much. Like I was feeling so called to be doing something else that I just I just couldn't stay where I was any longer. And I had to start figuring that out. And really that shift for me was the point where I started to build my confidence because I started to take action. And so I ended up meeting with a coach to kind of work through where I was at with things and to try to figure things out and what my skill sets were and what I really like to do. And within a degree in adult education, the HR experience I had, and just what my expertise had looked like at that point, coaching was a wonderful fit. And so I decided that I was going to do coach training. And my mentor found out, and she was in a spot where she was transitioning, and she's like, "You are going to be my coach." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I barely decided to do this and I already had a client. This is fabulous. I'm just gonna do this." And that's why it was on the side for a while. And it took me several years to build up the courage to leave. But finally, I did end up leaving, and it was one of the best decisions that I have ever made. And so I'm really excited to be here tonight to share with you not only a little bit about my journey, to hopefully share a bit of inspiration and motivation, but also to really talk to you because I think a lot of times, like starting your own business, entrepreneurship, like it can be a bit romanticized. And at the same time, it's like the romanticized part, and or you hear the people that are working like 60, 80 hours a week and burning themselves out. And so really thinking about it from like, what does that all entail and what does that look like, especially from the perspective of, for women in the world of work and what that really looks like for us. And so talking a little bit about what that really is for our reality. And I was joking a little bit earlier with Kelsey, and I'm like, is it okay if I say shit show? But this year has been a lot for everyone, and it has looked different for everyone, and there are aspects of it that are hard. If we, really struggle, if we focus, there can be definitely some silver linings, and maybe this is changing things for the best. But really, what does it look like for us as women, right? Well, statistics have shown that just this fall even, that 2 million women have dropped out of the workforce. Like, we're trying to do work and homeschool and trying to keep things going, and it is hard, and it's been a while now. So people are starting to get burned out. People are starting to get fatigued. For a lot of families, their options are to have one of the spouses leave the workforce. So often that does come down to having the moms leave. and what that really looks like in that type of a situation. And so really the percentage of American women working in the workforce is the lowest it's been since 1988, which I was really surprised to hear until you start looking at like what that does look like. And not only are the women leaving the workforce, there's certainly been certain industries, sectors, jobs that have been hugely impacted by the change, the uncertainty that we are living in the day to day. And so just to kind of keep things a little bit on the light side, I had to put this in. I love how being adult is just saying, but after this week, things will slow down a bit, again, to yourself until you die. Right? Isn't that kind of the promise we make? And it's a little tongue in cheek, but at the same time, just in general for us as a country, we are very ambitious. We are very hardworking. But a lot of times, too, what that really looks like is not necessarily a wonderful work-life balance. And we kind of keep putting off things that are important to us, like that dream in your heart that I mentioned earlier. And so what does that really look like to kind of hit pause a little bit on that and say, am I living intentional? Is what I'm doing what I want to be doing? And so thinking about too, this idea of women dropping out of the workforce, the idea of doing less is just not coded into high achieving people's sense of self. So the reason I'm sharing this is because I do really believe in women starting businesses. Like that is just something that I'm super passionate about. And I really feel like this is something that I've been called to do. And I think that thinking about it from a perspective of like, for so many people right now, what we're doing is not working. So it's like, what if you could create something that's working? What if you could create your own job, your own company, and to be able to create something within a lifestyle, to know that there is that possibility for so many people and for some, I have a friend who a couple years ago was out of a job, and she applied. She was so talented, and she just kept getting door slammed. And she was further along in her career, and people didn't want to take a chance on her. And so after having a lot of the doors slammed, she's like, I don't need you. I'm going to do my own thing. And she has been wildly successful as an entrepreneur with that motivation of proving people. Like, no one wanted to take a chance on her. She doesn't need them to take a chance on her. She is doing her own thing, and she is living her dream, and it's working out really well for her. And speaking of people taking a chance, I also thought it was really cool to find out that as of mid-September, applications to start new businesses across the country are up almost 20% as compared to last year, according to the US Census Bureau. And not only that, but there was a group of researchers from several top universities, Harvard and several others, where the studies that have indicated what they have researched is that more than 52% of the country's startups have been positively impacted by the pandemic. People are shifting. Certain industries have been more insulated from some of the things that are changes that are happening. And so there is really a lot of opportunity out there. And so what is next? What does the future look like? We've gotten some wonderful news that there is at least one, if not multiple, vaccines on the way. We may be evolving to a new normal, to getting some semblance back of how things were before COVID. And so one of the things I also wanted to share is the Made in All of America. And I was looking into this. I thought it was very interesting. It's actually the Biden plan, now that we're transitioning towards a new administration, and that was part of their COVID recovery plan. And they are proposing, it hasn't passed yet, but it's exciting that it's out there as a possibility to support entrepreneurs, that they are proposing $600 million in regional entrepreneurship centers and resources to to support underrepresented business owners, including people of color, women, and immigrants, and bringing broadband access to all corners of our nation. So that would be very exciting and open up a lot of opportunity for a lot of people. That in this day and age, we're getting more and more to the point where you don't necessarily need to go into an office or be in a big city to have a business. You can do some online. And what that would really look like to open up some opportunities for people. And so while this isn't necessarily past, it's exciting to know that that's what's out there and that there are opportunities coming potentially for entrepreneurs to really enhance and support what people are doing for 2021 and beyond. And so thinking about taking the leap, I know that with people kind of sharing their business, and some people are kind of thinking about starting a business, or maybe you have a side hustle or a gig, and thinking about what does it look like to make that leap of faith? Like, what does that really look like? And I found this one online and I had to share it with you because it's very interesting advice in my opinion. It says, do not quit your job until your side income covers twice as much as your monthly expenses. Your emergency fund can cover at least 6 months of expenses. You are skilled enough to make your side hustle your main business. You are determined to work hard to succeed. You are ready to work 12 to 16 hours a day. You don't make any excuses. And I saw this list, and some of it I agree with, and some of it I think that I don't agree with, because to me it kind of puts a thing out there as advice is only as good as the people giving it to me. So there's, with some of this is some like kind of general, like more the masculine idea of what it looks like to start a business, to start to start as an entrepreneur. And I think that there is some good advice, but I think that it's very situational. Like, what are your needs? Like, some people can start a business, like some of the service-based businesses, you can start maybe for hundreds of dollars. I mean, and some businesses are very heavy tech. They make thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest if you need brick and mortar, if you need specialty technology and equipment. So it's not really apples to apples. So kind of throwing this out there is like, these are all the things you need to like check off your list before you can even think about quitting your job. And I think too, one of the things that kind of sticks out with me is like, there's this idea, like as much as it's romanticized sometimes, there's also that other end of the spectrum where it's like, oh my gosh, you are going to love what you do so much that you're going to just work. You're going to work to the bone. You're going to work crazy long hours. And so like that piece of it, really thinking about what does that look like? And so for some people that's the reality, but that's kind of the scarcity mindset around time and energy. And I can tell you, I don't work 12 to 16 hours. Like, I want a work-life balance. Part of why I did this was to be able to create freedom and to be more energized and to have more variety in my life. And so just thinking about the advice that is out there and knowing like where you are and what are the things that are important to you. And yes, I think a safety net does help. And a lot of women, most women owned businesses do financially, you know, they bootstrap. They are the ones that really are funding and growing their businesses out of their own pockets. So I think thinking about some of those things and having a plan, but also knowing that each person is in a different situation and that there's never a right time. Like I was telling a friend that I was doing this, and she's like, it's kind of like having a baby where you can kind of tell yourself like, oh, this isn't the right time. This isn't the right time. But really, truly, is there ever that right time to do something new, to do something exciting, to challenge yourself? And I think of this list too, kind of thinking about you should. Like, these are the things that you should. And as soon as we start talking about should, that's where we are mirroring back other people's values. And so really kind of being intentional, even from starting to have those ideas or transitioning your side business, your side hustle to entrepreneurship, to a business. Like, what does that look like to really be able to create that on your own terms, and to know that there maybe are people that are going to say you should do this and you should do that. but to really bring that back to you, to your situation, and then really listening to your intuition. I don't think people talk about that nearly enough, but to know that what's going to work for one person isn't necessarily going to work for someone else. And I share, like, for what I was told when I started my business, one of the things that I was told was like, you should do a business plan. I was like, oh, I should do a business plan. Okay. So I have this really big business plan that I spent like hours and hours on that I didn't necessarily use that much. And so sometimes people do need business plans, especially if you're going for, going to banks for loans, VC funding. There might be pitching, like other things like that, depending on what your business is, what your industry is, for growth. You might need that. However, I think it's more accurate to say you need to do business planning. Like for me, I had known for a while I was looking and wanting something else and didn't necessarily think I was going to be starting a business until I realized that I don't know what I want to do is necessarily out there. And then when I did, by that point, I was just so done, that as much as I had, like, for example, I had some money in the bank that was just kind of there for a rainy day that I didn't know what I was going to use it for. But as far as planning, I didn't really have a plan. So, I gave my notice. I worked out an extended notice because it was really, it was 14 years, so it's hard for us to say goodbye. They're kind of like my work family. But I still remember I cashed that last paycheck, and the first week I was 100% out of my own in my business. I ended up binge watching Dexter the whole week, like on my couch. And it was because like all of the situation of it, like the overwhelming of like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And so you hear about like fight, flight, or freeze. My fear was paralyzing me. And luckily, by the end of the week, I was like, okay, you just worked 14 long years. You deserve a break. And if something doesn't change, you're going to have to freaking go back to the corporate life and do that. Like, so I had to give myself a little pep talk and move past my fear. But that was kind of one of the only regrets I have for that time, is just thinking a little bit more about planning. Because I had, when I first gave notice, I did get my first client, but of course, right about the time I was starting my business full time was when I was transitioning clients. And then it's like, well, my phone isn't ringing, my email box isn't overflowing. How am I going to get clients? It's like, oops, like you got to think of these things to be able to start growing. Like, everyone's in a different position, but what does that really look like to do marketing, to put yourself out there? And so I think that like that kind of comes back to this point around clarity and confidence, and thinking about it from the point of like, the more clear you can be on what you want to do, why you're doing it, and to have like that plan put together, even if that is changing. Maybe you have a quarterly plan, maybe you have an annual plan. I just was working with a client who had a 10-year plan, which was just like blew my mind. I'm like, you know what you want to do in 10 years? How cool is that? But the more that you are clear on that and you're able to have a plan, then you're able to take action. And action is where we build our confidence, because we're out there taking risks, no matter how small that step is, how small that action is. We are putting ourselves out there. We are expanding past our comfort zone. We are reaching for our potential. And so just taking action is going to build your confidence, especially then knowing if you took action, did it work out the way you wanted? Great, celebrate that. If not, that's a lesson learned. How will you do it differently next time? And it's not so much as a failure as it's an experiment. What is it teaching you? And I love this. I am a woman on a mission too. And then of course, everyone, has all the things that is their whys in the world, but really thinking about the action that you're taking aligned with what you're wanting to do in your business, why you're in business, and most importantly, in service of your clients, but really to be kind of focused on that and to know that there's going to be that part of it where you are out there and you are experimenting. And so having that mindset for resilience, because that's one of the things I had no idea when I started my business, is like how much rejection you have to go through, because it's that piece of it is way different than when I had a corporate job. Like I just wasn't really being asked to go outside of my comfort zone. And so to, on an occasion, like for any given week, it's one of those where you may have a new client sign up, or it may be where you have a couple people that they don't have the budget this year and they're pushing it for a couple of months, or you don't hear back from them and you thought they were going to make a decision by the end of the week. Just things like that, where keeping your confidence, knowing it's not necessarily about you, and to keep your confidence and energy up so that when you are approaching that next client, that you're not bringing some of those other situational energies to that. And thinking about building confidence and starting your business, I put together a list of 5 things that no one tells you about starting and running a business.
Laura, I'm just going to stop you for a second. We actually can't see your screen. So if you want to share your PowerPoint, I think we might have had a little glitch there.
Okay, let's see. Can you see it now?
No, we can't.
Let's see. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. There we go. Oh, okay, here we go.
There you go. Now we can see it. Perfect.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, I had such good graphics.
We'll send it out to everyone after so they can take a peek at it.
Exactly. And that's why you just have to improvise and you have to go with the flow. Like the first few minutes of us getting set up, it was like, So, okay, here we go. 5 things no one tells you about starting and running a business. Often the people you expect to support you aren't the ones who support you, which that just seems like, are you for real? But to me, I was super surprised to learn that. And I think part of it is like when you're starting a business, you're doing that because that aligns with your strengths, what you're good at, what you like to do. And the majority of people probably that are going to put themselves, the time and energy into a business, are doing that because they're passionate about it. They're excited. They like some aspect of what they're doing. And so even leaving like a corporate to start a business, like you're making a huge lifestyle change, yet the people in your life, your family and friends, like they haven't signed on necessarily to make a change. So especially when you're transitioning, when it's like new, that might be something where they are really supportive, but then like maybe that excitement, just like everything in life, right? We're always on to like the next new thing, and what's in the news tonight isn't going to be the next thing we're talking about tomorrow. And so thinking about that, but then maybe you have people that have been more, acquaintances, or maybe with, running in new and different circles of friends, like you'll have people that will be supporting you that really are, not the ones that you thought that were going to support you. And knowing that that's okay. And then really to be able to really start creating a new circle of, not that you're not going to be friends with your friends, not that you're not going to love your family, but just knowing like if that's something where you're starting to collaborate community, that is maybe going to look different. And then to thinking about business is messy, and that is super normal. And I love this like graphic of like, oh my gosh, I got my coffee, I can do this. Why is this hard? I need more hours in the day. Oh, but wait, I've got this. 3 p.m. Is it time to quit yet? I'm kind of out of energy. Time for dinner, but I'm still working. And I would definitely add to this one where you are also checking your bank account to see if you got paid, especially when you are starting your business, to really be in those days where you're like, holding your breath, like, oh, am I going to get paid? They said they were going to pay me by the end of the week. It's Friday at 4. I don't have any money. How am I going to pay my bills? But you know what? You get through it. And business is messy because you are constantly growing and constantly changing. And there's often that huge learning curve, especially as you start out on your own, or even as you're bringing people on and training them. You're constantly learning new things. And so, really, to be able to embrace that, because I can't even tell you how many clients I've worked with, and we start going over like a strategic plan, and it's like, okay, tell me about your business. And we, start building the trust, and they're telling me more and more. And then they're like, just wanted you to know that it looks really nice from the outside, but it's a hot mess. It's like, no, that's normal. But it's also too, it's like how you start thinking about the process. And it's like messy, but in a good way. So you are evolving, you are learning, you are growing. You are not a hot mess. Your business is exactly how it is supposed to be at the time, and having that outside support is really kind of what helps to get clear on where you are, and then to start shifting some of those mindset patterns so that you are thinking about it in a little bit different way, and not being so hard on yourself. Another thing that I learned is your energy is your most valuable resource. Guard it well. Like as Mariah says, I know we're all getting excited for her, holiday tunes, right? She's the lady of the hour coming up here in a couple of weeks. Time is irrelevant to me. And I mean that in the fact that, like, yes, we have 24 hours, but we can't always do everything in those 24 hours we want. But not only that, but thinking about what can you do with your time, but most importantly, what can you do with your energy? So guarding your energy, setting boundaries around that, working with clients that respect your boundaries, and really to be able to maximize some of that. And I know for me this year, what that has looked like is getting more help, because I'm only one person, but at the same time, to be growing my business, to know what that looks like to have a virtual assistant, to be able to have someone to be able to jump in and do some of those things that I don't like, and they take me like way long to do, right? And then even thinking about it from your personal situation, like this is the first time that I was like, okay, in order to make this work, to be able to give my business the energy it's asking of me right now, like what does my business need? This is what it needs from me. I even ended up having someone that comes in a couple times a month to help with doing some cleaning for my condo, to be able to, again, give that time and energy to my business. So really being able to do what you need to do to guard that. And if you're also having client meetings or projects that you're on where you're feeling very depleted, that might be not necessarily the best fit. So really kind of being focused on that to see where you are putting your time and energy, but specifically like your energy to really guard that, because that you can see that screen a couple screens ago, but one of the things was talking about you have to work 12 to 16 hours. That's not sustainable. So what can you do to guard your energy to make sure that it is sustainable? And then also thinking about everything changes when you seek collaboration instead of seeing competition everywhere. And I know that it is hard sometimes, like especially when you are getting started. Like a lot of times you will look to the people in the industry, the people in your business. It's totally natural, but at the same time, there's always that that piece of it where, to see competition, that can be something where it maybe is a negative for you, that it makes you doubt yourself or your business. And really knowing that you are your competitive advantage. And so instead, if you can see and find the collaborations to really be able to make the most of your business, to be able to have the support you need, especially if you are a solopreneur, And then also to be able to support others, because that's, it's like all boats rise when the tide rises. And so thinking about that, like, how are you supporting different entrepreneurs in your space, people that are doing maybe complementary things where you're collaborating. The one thing that I've learned the hard way, so I'm going to share with you to hopefully help you, save you a little heartache, so I've had quite a few collaborations in 10 years, and the ones that I've had the best ones with really are people and businesses that I'm very much aligned with values, and our missions are aligned as well, and how we like to do business. So just kind of thinking about those pieces, and maybe even kind of have like a dating period where maybe you're just working on a project, or maybe you're guesting on someone's podcast or things like that, where you're able to kind of support each other and kind of test it out a little bit to see if it's a good fit. Otherwise, sometimes you can get sucked in, because it's one of those things in life where you're either building your dream or you are building somebody else's dream. And so, what does that really look like to have collaborations where they are a win-win? And then if you are having a hard time with kind of the competition piece, like knowing that there are some pieces, that is natural, but then also too, like, does that really serve your business? And, what is it costing you if you are coming at it from more of a competition, of more of, a scarcity, versus seeing the market as you are your competitive advantage, your business is doing things differently than others. And then the last one, which I think is actually the most important, your mindset is everything. And I couldn't stress that more, because I think, like what we talked about a little bit earlier around the resilience, like what does it really take to start and grow a business? And I kind of joke that people ask me, like, how have you done this for 10 years? And one of the things is like, okay, I don't have a backup plan, so that kind of helps, right? No safety net, like you're just doing this. And then I'm like, I am super stubborn. Like, this is what I am doing. This is where, like, my heart is. And so I'm really focused on this. But, I think that thinking about the mindset piece and how that shows up in your business, I have a friend that it's been a couple of months, but was out with her, and she brought a friend doing a social distance. They were like doing their thing and I was doing my thing. Everyone was social distancing. And I had not met the friend before, and she was asking me what I did, and I told her, and she was like, oh, I used to own a business. And then she kind of made a face and she's like, oh, I'm so glad I don't own it anymore, or I wouldn't be able to be out on this beautiful afternoon enjoying the weather. And I was kind of like, oh, kind of confused. And then she goes on to tell me that her business was one where they were open 24/7, that they're in a helping profession. They're one that needs to be open 24/7. However, she shared early in the business that she went on vacation, and when she got back, everything was all messed up. So she no longer was willing to go on vacations, delegate anything. Basically, she did not trust her employees. And not only that, but this mindset around, you can't trust people, you have to do everything yourself, that was like so strong that I could only imagine what it would be like to be an employee, if you're never getting an opportunity to step up, if you're never being delegated to, like, what that really looks like. And that's, one I think that people do sometimes struggle with, but just those little things that can, really hold you back in your business. And really, like the mindset piece of that, to really be able to, believe in yourself. And if there are doubts coming up, if there's fear around that, like, what is that trying to tell you? And this is actually one that I saw online, and it comes up so often. So I wanted to share it here. Self-doubt is killing me, and I don't know how to deal with it. I know oops, sorry, it's in the way. Whoops, wrong way. All right. I know what I want to do, and then I see others who are so talented and creative, and I think, how could I ever compete with that person? Then I put my dreams on hold once again, and I hate this self-defeating attitude. I just don't know how to overcome it. And like, oh, I want to like cry for this person. Like, she puts her dreams on hold. And so I think like this just kind of reflects back, like, that mindset thing. It's like, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I'll go through some of this quickly because I know we're fast on the time here. But one of the things I think that's really important to acknowledge is that, especially for women, they have been raised to, how's a nice way to say this? Like, a lot of the skill sets you need to be a successful entrepreneur, you are pretty much raised to do the opposite. Put everyone else's needs first, to be perfect, which, newsflash for me, one of the things I learned in my business is like perfect doesn't exist. And if you're, trying to break that bar, you're in trouble. And then just, having to advocate for yourself and really to follow these rules that don't exist of what that looks like to be able to, break the good girl myth and to really be able to honor your journey and show up fully in your business. And then again, talking a bit about the mindset and the fear that comes up so often when you are doing things outside of your comfort zone. Our emotions are A, an annoyance, B, all fabricated, C, messengers, D, something to be annoyed about. Let me tell you, back when I was in the corporate days, it'd be like, something to be annoyed about. But really, the benefit of having emotions, both positive and negative, even if you want to label them one way or another, really is that they are messengers. So, for example, if you are having jealousy come up, what is that? What is that trying to tell you? Like, if someone's launched a new product and you're jealous, well, maybe you should launch, a product as well. Like, maybe you would have something more creative or innovative to bring to the marketplace. So last week I was at the TEDx Women Conference, and one of the speakers was Keisha. And I love this quote: "I can't tell you how to not be afraid, but I can tell you that I've experienced how to not be defined by my fears." So I really think if there's one thing, to take away from our evening tonight, I really hope it would be this: that if you have that dream, if you're wanting to start, if you're wanting to start over, if you're wanting to build and grow, don't let your fears define you. Don't let them limit what you are able to do, how you're able to put yourself out in the world. And I know it's easier said than done because it's something that I am putting into practice every day myself too. And so thinking about the fear, thinking about what that can look like, often that is imposter syndrome. And one of the things that often comes up, it's actually the last couple of years in particular, I feel like it's come up quite a bit, but like, what is imposter syndrome? And I have it like right out of that. And I was somewhat surprised when I first learned this, but up to 70% of people experience imposter syndrome at some point or another. And it describes feelings of severe inadequacy and self-doubt that people really feel like they're going to be found out as like a fraud. To say, oh my gosh, who are you to give this talk? Who are you to start a business? Who are you to train me? Who are you to write a book? You don't know anything. But really, how do you overcome it? And thinking about it from, what about flipping the script? And so the one thing I want to throw out is, what if imposter syndrome wasn't necessarily a bad thing? Like, flipping that script to say that really, when it comes up for you, that those are the times where you are expanding your comfort zone, where you're playing to your potential. So while it is hard to deal with, it really, the fact that you have it really does highlight the fact of how far you've come on your journey, and that you are willing to take chance, to take risks. And so it's more of, how do you minimize it, and how do you override some of those thoughts that are not helpful? And so one of the strategies that I have used that works really well is thinking about what is fact and what's fiction. If you are having, feeling like a fraud, well, for example, are you someone that has a certification? Are you someone that has a degree? Like, what are the proof? What is the truth of what is the skills and expertise of what you are bringing to a company, what you are bringing to a project, and really to be able to, every time you doubt yourself, come back to the fact of the situation, and then to work through some of those fictional thoughts, like why are those coming up for you? And then also another great way to get through that, to minimize some of that, is ask for feedback. I actually had a client who did a 360, and there was a self-assessment piece, and then you have collaborators rate you as well. And the very interesting thing was that he significantly rated himself lower in almost every area than all the other people that worked for him. And so when you have feedback like that, where it's so glaring, where people are really giving you that concrete anonymous feedback at a really high level to say, this is the truth of how you are showing up, this is our assessment of your work, like, it's hard to argue with data. Like, it's really, to be able to have that, and maybe you don't have access to an assessment, but even thinking about like having a community board or having someone else outside of you that you trust, where you can kind of bounce ideas and get some feedback, and really try to help assess like where you are and what is the truth about you in your skills and expertise. So thinking about what is possible. I love the Serena Williams quote. Every woman's success should be an inspiration to another. We're strongest when we cheer each other on. And I think that is so very important. And that's why I want to give, a shout out again to Madison College for sponsoring this beautiful evening for us, and for all of you who are here tonight, and those that wish they were able to join us as well, to think about really what is possible and what does that look like to create something different, to dream about that business, to take action on starting a business, to grow a business, and knowing that you're honoring what you were called and put here to do, and what that looks like if everyone was doing work that they love. Everyone was like energized. And I know it sounds kind of like woo-woo, but really, I truly in my heart believe that. And I think that there is so much that is possible, and there's so many people that are ready and waiting to cheer you on and support you. And so I think that this is such a wonderful opportunity for us to get together this evening. And thinking about what's possible, I had to give a shout out, like the Madison area in general has phenomenal support for entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs over the last 5 to 10 years, even. Like, if you see different studies, different rankings, like Madison is like hopping up that list. Like, we are really doing a lot to encourage growth. And obviously Madison College, their Center for Entrepreneurship. I am part of the Joanne Group, a women's entrepreneurial group that does training and some funding. There's also different coaching for established business through the SBA, Small Business Administration, through the UW. WIBIC also does some training and funding in the community. For my business, I'm a certified business and life coach, where I support entrepreneurs in their starting and growing their businesses. And these are just a fraction. Like, I know I'm overlooking so many to give shout outs for. American Family does so much in our community. There's so many that we could talk about. But just know, like, if you need support, there are people that are out there that want to support you, that want to see our economy flourish, and that believe that a big piece of that is when we start our own businesses and when we support entrepreneurship. And I had to throw this out there too. Wisconsin Entrepreneur, I saw this on their Facebook page, but I know it's made its way around the internet. But just thinking like, maybe you're listening tonight, maybe you came here with a bit of curiosity, and maybe you're like, well, maybe this isn't necessarily like the path for me, or the timing's not right. But there's so many different ways to support small business. Whether you're giving people, social media love, or signing up for their newsletter, or even, we have the holidays coming up, ordering gifts from small businesses. Like, I've been trying to be better about that too. I got this fancy little sweater right down the street. But just being more thoughtful on some of that, of how you can support. And it's so appreciated. When you buy from a small business, you are really helping to support someone's dream. So it's a win-win all around. And so I know there's been some inspiration throughout, hopefully. And one of the things that I wanted to leave you with was, in 2017, after several years of wanting to go to Emerging Leaders Women Conference, I finally found enough money, got my ticket, was like brave enough to go to an out-of-state conference by myself, which was like a really big deal. And there was a woman by the name of Susie Batiz on the agenda who was going to give a talk. And like, honestly, I'd never heard of her, to be, just had never heard of her. So if I'm saying her name and you're like, who, what? And she got up there, and it was one of the best talks I'd ever heard. She's actually the founder of Poopery, which you may be familiar with the product, but it's oil, not just essential oil based spray, that, bathroom spray. But anyways, it's almost like $1 billion company. So like she's got something going there. But it's after almost she lost everything. Like, she told a story about how she was like on her bathroom floor crying, and they were towing her fancy SUVs, and she was gonna have to sell her house. And she got this idea, and it kept coming back to her. But what she shared in that I wanted to share today is she talked about resonance and dissonance. And what it really means is, like, we have within us, like, if we know we're supposed to do something, and I so resonated with like what I had gone through, but like, if you have that thing that's pulling you forward, like it just keeps at you, it's not gonna go away, like that's where your meaning is. Like, that's what the motivation is like the thing that is going to keep pulling you forward, like through the good times and the bad, and what really aligns with the meaning that we find here for the time that we are here. And and thinking about that too, meaning and motivation, and just for people that maybe are, have that dream, haven't necessarily started on it, and it's totally scary. But one of the things that helped me was thinking about this nurse, Bonnie Ware, wrote the book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And one of them is, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. And so ultimately what her takeaway is that people have more regrets at the end of their life based on the things that they didn't do than the things they did. So I share that because if that is in your heart, like, go for it. Just go for it. And maybe not now, maybe someday, but thinking about what is that going to be like to get to the end of your life, and what would you maybe have as a regret? And hopefully we all live our lives and have no regrets. I know I'm trying very hard to do that. But I just thought that was so interesting to say. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. And to wrap up tonight, I wanted to share with you that, like I said, we have a lot of support And I'm happy to do connecting. I'm happy to answer questions, which we'll get to in a moment, but wanted to share that the first 5 women to request it will receive a complimentary business builder session. So if there's anything I can do to help you build your business or take action on your dream, don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to support you. And so the last, I don't know if we have any Schitt's Creek fans. They have been bombarded with award season Emmys. Like, they are like the show of the year. And I love Moira. And so she is just living her best life, even though she's had to be resilient. They lost all their money. They had on a joke bought this little town in the middle of nowhere. And now they're staying at this like rundown little like hotel motel. But she's still like glamming it up and doing her thing. And so to remind you, you are ready for this. You are ready for this. You are so ready for this. Champion yourself and take action. Thank you very much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. And I am excited to take any questions or talk through any of the information that I shared with you earlier.
Feel free to ask any questions in the chat, or you can go ahead and ask them verbally too.
Hi, Laura.
Hi.
And Kelsey, thank you. My question is, when you were thinking about doing your business, did you like try different ideas, or were you set on one thing and you achieved it? Because I think oftentimes we think we're going down one path and then that closes up, but that might be a reason to start some other thing that might be more, fruitful for you.
Yes, absolutely. And I did a long time. I was in the research phase because I was scared to take action. So really thinking about my strengths, what I was good at, what I like to do. And then to your point, which I love your question, so thanks for sharing. When I started my business, I had done my coach certification program. And so I was like going to do some coaching because I had an HR background. People had started asking about career coaching. And then tonight is a wonderful example. I never, even though I have a degree in adult education, I had never thought about speaking and had actually reached out to the Dream Bank just to share what my career change look like and all the lessons I learned, to say, I have these hard fought lessons. Can I share them and maybe, give someone a shortcut? And did that, and like haven't looked back, but really with like my strengths assessment that reaffirmed that I have, communication, woo, like other strengths around like why this is such a good fit. And even though it scares me, I do it anyway.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Joan. Are there any other questions or comments?
Oh, just one more, since there's not a lot of questions right now, but
Oh, please, yes.
Was it very expensive, or how much did you have to invest? And I'm not just talking about, taking their certificate, but just, the time you needed to complete it, and the time you needed to find someone. I think you were lucky enough to find someone pretty quickly to start, but time-wise, what sort of investment, or can you generalize, or can you let us know for yourself? I know it's everyone's different.
Yeah.
What investment time was.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, I would say probably over 10 years, I would probably say I've invested like $30,000. And what that looks like is I have a life coach certification. I have a conscious business certification. I've also, I walk the walk, talk the talk. And, so that is also looks like having worked with business coach myself, marketing coach, like kind of pulling in resources. But what I've seen is as that momentum grows, to be able to reinvest back into the business. And so I've been able to pace myself in a way that has felt comfortable. And some years there was maybe more investments, and other years maybe there was not as many investments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I have a story, a quick story to tell that I was going to say earlier that I didn't. So I'll tell you if anyone wants to share any more questions. But so I think sometimes we get, you know, the idea around like, what if, you know, maybe something will come up, we want to do what if. And so about a month ago, I was invited on a podcast, and we had, you know, a pre-podcast meeting. So we got to know each other. We had like this wonderful back and forth. I was really looking forward to it. We picked our topic. Then I get to the actual interview, which is live. And at the last minute, she switches the topic. So of course, you know, like, you're going to go with it, right? And then she's like, okay, I'm going to do a quick introduction and then come back and get you. Well, I misunderstood, thinking she was doing like how Kelsey introduced me today. So she comes back, and then she's like, and who is Laura Jeminder? And I absolutely froze. I had that like reverberating echoes in my head, like, oh my gosh, how much time do you have? Like, who am I? That's such a big question. And seriously, it was probably only like 10 seconds, but it was just long enough where you're like, oh my gosh, like, say something, say anything. And it was actually an interview on building your confidence and breaking up with your good girl ways. And so I was able to really use that as an example that we do think, like, what if I choke? Like, what if I don't know what to say? And that does happen sometimes, because we're human, we're not perfect. And so to be able to weave that into what I was saying, to be able to, you know, to keep moving things forward, and for us to kind of, you know, she helped me kind of get back into that rhythm, and it ended up being a really great interview. But, you know, even 10 years in, I still have moments like that, and you just have to chalk it up to, you know, an off day, and to look at and focus on what's next.
I guess I had a question. I'm gonna try to lower my hand because I was raising my hand instead. But my question is, you mentioned something about public speaking,
Yes.
and I guess is that a new journey for you? Like, as far as like the next level to your business, and if so, um, what advice would you give to a person who may want to pursue that as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Theodora. So I hadn't intended, when I started, you know, thinking about what I was going to be offering in my business, I hadn't thought about doing speaking. And then what had happened was that I did feel like I really wanted to give back. So I called up, you know, American Family Dream Bank, and kind of talked them through. And prior to that, I had reached out to our local library. So when I did talk to American Family, I was able to say, you know, this is my background, this is the kind of a career experience, and I've already given this presentation, and here's how it went. You can, you know, check in with that person. But I really recommend, if it's something that you are wanting to do, speaking in general is very male-dominated industry, so we can always use more talented women like yourself. And, you know, for me, doing that route of going through the library and having a community presentation, but you know, just even with that being like 5 years ago, technology has changed so much where you can do your own webinar. You know, like, I'll have clients who go on, do webinars, and then they're inviting people to come on, whether it's webinar or masterclass, and to be able to get some experience, and then, you know, tape record it, and then you're able to share that out to pitch yourself. And where I'm in my speaking career, sometimes I get people asking me to speak. Otherwise, like for Madison College, I knew that they were doing a lot of really cool stuff with their entrepreneur center. And so I'm like, you know, I'm just gonna put myself out there and, just reached out and kind of said, hey, this is my background. This is kind of my idea. And they hadn't done anything like that. And so we kind of just went from there. But another idea too is working with a mentor or a speaker coach. I know in Facebook particular, there are a lot of groups for speakers. So if that's something you're interested in pursuing, in fact, one of my really good friends in Milwaukee started a speaker group. So I'd be happy if you want to email me and I can get you connected over with that group.
If there's no more questions, another question I wanted to ask was, um, I guess what I do, um, I feel like involves media presence, and I have always been like media shy, like not
Yeah.
like I think the reason why I was thinking about speaking is because I have a lot to say, and I think that my experience could help someone, that has been in my shoes, and I've been known to do that
Yeah.
in present. But
Yeah.
you know, on media platforms, I haven't been able to do that. I think I've tried to do some like pre-recorded stuff, and so you know how like sometimes you're so judgmental about your own self to
Mhm.
where like you're kind of afraid of like how others would perceive you. So I
Mhm.
think that my fear of or getting over the hurdle of um you know being on media or being in public speaking where it's like all eyes on you, all attention's on you, like how do you deal with that?
Mhm. I that's another great question. And I think that just that you have that awareness that I want to do something, but my fear, my self-doubt, like, is really holding me back. Like you said, I am worried about people judging me. And so I think about it like there's two ways to think about it. It's like, what's the best thing that would happen if you go forward and do it, and what's the worst thing that would happen, and then just kind of playing those scenarios out. And then I think about it too, one of my coaching mentors, she's a master coach, a question she taught me is that by not doing that, by not putting yourself out there as a speaker when that's like a dream you have in your heart that's not going away, what is that costing you? And if you're like me, when I hold myself back, it costs me a lot. It like costs me my confidence, and it costs me um an ability to connect with people. It costs me an opportunity to do something I enjoy. And so thinking about what would be a step that you could do, that, because I think about it like a scale, right? So one end of the scale is like super scary, like scariest thing you've ever done. And the other end of the scale is super excited, like can't wait to do it. And where does that fall? Because if you're more scared than excited, chances are you're not going to do it. Like that fear is just going to override. So if you had said to me, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being like the most scared, if you had said, Laura, right now I am at a 3, then I would say, Theodora, what would it take to get you to a 5? And so maybe there's a way to take a small step towards that. Or sometimes, like when I was starting out and I would get nervous, like the collaboration idea of saying, maybe there is a friend who also wants to do some speaking, where you get on a Zoom call and just, it's someone you're comfortable with and you kind of talk back and forth. And so you're able to practice the skills that you love and then start, building on, and then that momentum to kind of keep moving that process forward. And then, maybe you reach out and get booked on a podcast. And so maybe you're just like keep building with, like you said, you are excited to be a speaker and you have so much to say. So thinking about that message, like how do you get that message out into the world, and what does that look like so that you can take action? So like thinking about it as like a smaller goal to take like a little bit of a step towards that. And then if that still seems like you're having a hard time thinking about moving forward, and that your fear is still, at the 3 or whatever, where it's just going to be hard to try something new, then that might even be an opportunity. Like, feel free to reach out to me, but thinking about, really figuring out like what's all there for you to really kind of talk through, where you're at, and like what like in a perfect, perfect scenario, what would that look like? And then how can you, create that, and what is kind of the mindset to be successful in this situation? And it's hard, but I know you can do hard things. That's what I always tell myself. In fact, I have this, I don't know if I'm still on the screen or not, but I have this little plaque that hangs that I look at every day. It says, do one thing every day that scares you. And just in case you're wondering, this is my one thing that scares me today.
We have 2 more questions here. We have Erica in the chat, and she said, I have a question about the marketing of your business. Does someone else do the marketing for you? And is it very costly to pay the web developer to do small changes in your website when required of them?
Erica, I like it. So because of how I started doing my business on the side and under the radar, I kind of had like started building that up. And so the long and the short of it is, for a very long time, my business was very much referrals. My last name, like my family has been in the Madison community for a very long time. My father and grandfather owned business. Like I was very lucky in that, there were some opportunities there for me as well. But I have had to have, with expanding, I'm doing more marketing. My VA is helping with the marketing. Things like this for me are marketing, where I'm able to come and share and provide value for my clients. And then also thinking about what that looks like as in January, I'm launching a small group program. So that's more, paid advertising on social media. But overall, I've kind of looked at the strategy as, a lot with like referrals, but then also, for example, like the International Coach Federation invited me to write articles on their blog. So I'm not paying to advertise, paying for marketing, but I'm putting a lot of time and energy into writing articles for women creating their business. But as I'm shifting and having less time and energy, to be able to outsource some of that, and then to be able to, have the budget for some of that as well. And then to your point about the website, and this is one of the things that's on my list for the next year or two, is shifting some of that. But I use Squarespace. And so at the beginning of my business, I taught myself, it's one that's like very easy. You click and you put a picture in, you click, you put some text in. There's not the coding unless you want to have coding. So for me, I have immediate access to change anything, which, as you can imagine, is a blessing and a curse. It's like sometimes I'm in there a lot, and then other times it's like, oh my gosh, several months have gone by. And that really, with the website and the domain and all that, I think I pay maybe like $100 a year. So a very minimal investment versus, I'm looking for what that next step looks like, and seeing, several thousand, probably, 5,000-7,000, like to get a very like bells and whistle kind of website where I may or may not have that access to make some quick changes and additions. But like we have a website for my condo, and I know when we like make small adjustments, it's only like a couple $100. So I think that's part of it too. And whether you need someone that has like that high level coding, high level graphics, or if it's someone where you can, go on Fiverr, and pay them to quickly go on your website and make some, changes. And maybe it's, $50 for, changes, a copy on 2 pages or something like that. Good question. Thank you.
And we have one last question here from Emily. She said, I'm interested in starting coaching, but I am so conflicted on how to start taking the right steps. How did you find that coaching was right for you? And how did you find certification to do?
So I would say, first of all, there are no right steps. And I say that very lovingly and joking. The little bit of laughing was thinking about my own journey to coach, because I actually started coach training program 10 years ago. Right away got that mentor. And then with kind of the time and money piece, I'm like, okay, I've done what I'm going to do this year. I'm going to get back at it. Well, coaching is completely unregulated. No one cared. No one ever asked me about it. It wasn't until about 4 or 5 years ago when a friend invited me to coach for an international nonprofit that coaches emerging leaders around the world. She's like, oh, I've loved it. It's so aligned with, you know, your values. You should be one of our coaches. So I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. You know, get some exposure, you know, grow my business international. And so I applied. I got halfway through the application, the interview process, and they're like, oh, we changed our process. Our lawyer says everyone needs to be certified. And let me tell you, it froze me in my tracks because this was a volunteer gig. I'm like, what kinds of opportunities am I going to miss out on if I don't have my certification? So I had been working with a marketing coach in my business, and I remember her, you know, probably 6 months earlier that she had mentioned she worked with this woman, Marian Franklin. And she's like, she's the best. She's been like a life coach for 40 years, eccentric, but like, and so I looked, and it was like her program. She is one of the top coaches in the world. She's the real deal. And she's even written a book that's like an Amazon bestseller. All the coaches use it. But really what it comes down to for someone like yourself that is curious about coaching, that's interested in getting coaching, I would say a big piece that I found from certification is the confidence that comes along with it. Like, you know, you've been well trained, you know that you, if you get an International Coach Federation certification, you have ethics, you have guidelines. And so overall, I have found that I'm glad that I did it. And also any accredited schools, you can go on the International Coach Federation, or feel free to reach out to me. But to be able to see which schools are accredited, so that if you did want to go down that path where you got your certification. And like I said, you know, when I started 10 years ago, it was way different than now. Plus, like, there were no coaches really. Like, it was just a very young field, a very young profession. And so now too, I really is a competitive advantage, especially with some of the programs in the area. You know, every year they're graduating 20 or 30 coaches in the Madison market. But luckily for us, we live in the age of technology, and you can coach people all over the world. And thank you for your question, and good luck with that. It's very exciting.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. Your personal stories and experience and the many tips that you shared tonight are truly inspirational for all of us. So thank you for that. And thanks for joining us tonight. If there are no other questions, I think that will conclude our webinar for this evening. And on behalf of the entrepreneurship at Madison College, I would like to thank all of you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful.
And where can I email you at?
Oh, good call.
Thank you.
There you go. It's Laura@laurajaminder.com.
And I'll include that when I send out the slides, and then as well as the recording for tonight. So if anybody has any questions, you can reach out to the Entrepreneurship Center too, and we will connect you to Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.